some ways we actually ask that people adapt their workflows a little bit, so we still want to fit in the overall workflow so that it's not completely alien, but because you're doing predictive maintenance, it will require some change to your way of thinking as well.
Welcome to the Trend Detection Podcast, powered by Siemens.
Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the Trend Detection Podcast. I'm really pleased to be joined by a long-time colleague. I'm going to describe you as Chris, because we have been colleagues for quite a while now. And we were just discussing, actually, it's been a while since you've been on the podcast. So welcome back, first of all.
Oh, thank you very much. Clearly back in vogue again.
Exactly. You're always in vogue. But no, we're really pleased to have you back. We're going to be talking about predictive maintenance, which isn't a great surprise. But one thing we don't talk about that much is actually the importance of it integrating with your CMMS platform as well. And so we're going to dive into that in a bit more detail. But I guess before we do, Chris, you've obviously got legions of fans from the Trend Detection podcast and further, but you might want to introduce yourself back to the audience just in case people may have forgotten.
Yeah, of course. So, name's Chris Smith. I am head of operations for Senseye Predictive Maintenance. So effectively my role is to define how we deploy our technology into customers globally and support our regional businesses. Effectively, whether you're in Singapore, UK, Germany, my role is to make sure that you have local resource that is well-trained, well-drilled, and has the right support so that you get the best predictive maintenance deployment that you can. So very much post-sale up until full implementation and you using the application on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, fantastic. I guess to open up on the topic we're talking about today, so when did discussions start about sort of integrations and maybe in general, but with CMMS in particular, when do those start happening with the customer? Is it quite, I guess, before you're in conversation with them, right? Sometime before that?
I would say it splits in two. So we either have customers that want to do everything at once, so where they want to onboard using Senseye, have it fully integrated into their workflow in their CMMS system from day one. And then other customers who want to step in, use the platform first, and then understand once they look at more scaling, how do we integrate it into their CMMS system? So I would say, generally speaking, there's those two camps.
Is there a benefit to approaching one way, or I could imagine what the benefits would be, but from your experience, is there a better approach you'd recommend?
I would say, from what I've experienced, is that the classic walk before you can run is a good mantra in this circumstance. Setting up a predictive maintenance deployment can be complex. We've got a lot of different people involved, from IT, OD, maintenance team, asset owners, various stakeholders at management, etc. And you're trying to get value as soon as possible. Adding an extra layer whereby you're putting a CMMS integration in there at the same time, where you don't necessarily fully understand how PDM is going to work in your environment, because everyone's environment is a bit different. How you handle work, etc., is a bit more different to other organizations. And so it can add quite a layer of distraction, I would say, from getting your first value. Whereas if you wait until you've got your, the first project up and running, you then have the space to understand, okay, what would be the best way to integrate this into our wider workflows? When you're in the kind of more proof of value phase, I would say, you're concentrating on getting value. I would say the second phase is then optimizing, and that is probably the best time for integration, at least from a workflow perspective. If we're looking at getting information in from CMMS in order to supplement the Senseye platform, PDM platform, then maybe you could do it a bit earlier. But that would be my general advice.
Yeah, I completely get what you're saying around sort of distraction as well. And I guess you want to be able to see the insights in the predictive maintenance sort of platform. But you need to be able to focus on that and see what the value is in that before you start imagining a big ecosystem. It's like trying to start with 10,000 machines out the gate as well, right?
That's an interesting one. You never want to go too small. You could do 10,000 at once. That is possible. But it's more, I wouldn't even say it's the scale of the deployment. We tend to say the scale of deployment, we want to be a good size so that it has a significant impact on your day-to-day. You don't want it to be a science project where you're only looking at 10, 20 assets. You want to do a good amount because your chance of success is higher, but also your impact on your local team is higher. It could be a whole line, it could be several lines, so that it means something. And so I wouldn't necessarily say this. See, in either case, if you started with 1,000 assets, apart from maybe some kind of migration of your SAP hierarchy or your eMaint hierarchy or whatever your CMMS has, that can be valued early on. But really trying to work out how you're going to integrate into your workflows at that point, I think is too early, regardless of the initial scale of the proof of value.
So sort of customers already have this in mind. They know they've got CMMS, they know they use it for work orders and things like that. So when they're talking to, us about Senseye and deploying predictive maintenance, is it already something in their mind, or is it a bit more of an afterthought about, we'll look at the integration later. We know we've got this other system, but we'll maybe look at integrating it later. What's on balance? What's the process?
It's very much, we don't want to duplicate work. Is the statement that's always made, right? So if someone's putting information into the CMMS system, they don't want to also put it into Senseye. And so when I say some caution about waiting, about doing it straight away, you can see a slight, but then we'd have to do duplicate work. I'm not talking 2 years in terms of delay. I'm more thinking, let the first 3 to 6 months pass where you're getting familiar with the system, and then you can ensure that any kind of integration work fits into that workflow. So everyone's always talking about it. It always comes up. It's just about getting that timing right, really. So it's not an if. It's not an if. It's very much a when.
And for those who do completely understand what you're saying about maybe like pushing out any sort of integration until sort of value in the actual PDM platform is established first. But for the ones who do, I guess they're not their argument, but their position would be, as well as duplicating work, but also when they're thinking about sort of user adoption as well, how quickly to pick up. They're probably thinking they know that system really well, and that's how we work day to day. So if Senseye could just push insights into that, then off we go. So I guess that's part of the thinking as well, maybe.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a good argument. What I would say is the challenge of, so one thing we often get asked to do is, or the question, so we have a concept of cases. For anyone who's not a long-time listener of this trend detection podcast might not know what a case is, so I'll quickly describe it. Mm-hmm. A case is our active notification with the evidence as to say why we've raised that case. So the data has shown change and we think it's due to these reasons, and you should act within days, weeks, months, depending on what we see. So that's the case. Generally, that's the thing that gets pushed into a CMMS system in some way so that you have an alert in your CMMS system. But what's interesting is you have two schools of thought, whereby do you have every single case pushed in to create a work notification, and then you manage the workflow in there, whereby you're managing all your cases via that and then moving back into Senseye to look at more detail. Because, fundamentally, we have a lot more user interface with the purpose of being able to look at this data in more detail or look at the information in more detail. It's not really, MS systems aren't really set up that way on the vast majority of cases. And so you could say manage it all in there, but depending on local KPIs, depending on how your planning department works, etc., it can get unwieldy. The other option is actually you have your reliability team, your maintenance team, your PDM team, depending on how you set yourselves up, look at the cases in Senseye, and then we have an option where you can manually push that case into your CMMS system. And what I mean by manually is rather than it being an automatic transfer of the information, that's effectively a button push to CMMS. So you have much more control. And then that way the case then becomes the notification isn't go look at this case. The notification is we've looked at the case and we want to do some action now, some actual work, then push it into the CMMS to start that whole work order process. So yeah, back to your original question is there a push to do that sooner so it's within the right workflows? In some ways, we actually ask that people adapt their workflows a little bit, so we still want to fit in the overall workflow so that it's not completely alien, but because you're doing predictive maintenance, it will require some change to your way of thinking as well. So there's a balance there.
Yeah, and it's interesting how you describe those slightly different, because we're not just talking about, I'll just integrate your CMMS. Even within that question, there's how do you want to use it? Like I said, do you just want we should take action on this, or do you want the information of the whole case and then decide to take action. So even that's like a nuance as well, which which I didn't consider.
Yeah, it's just they're relatively, I wouldn't say small decisions, but they're not big, complicated decisions, but they are worth considering before you make and that's why I don't suggest doing it from day one. And maybe just wait a little bit until people have got used to it, because then they can more imagine how it's going to work within their organization.
And I was just thinking as well, so even you get to the point of sort of integrating it as well, but at the end of the day, someone still needs to take an action on that decision. I don't know how that's affected by being in one system or the other, but a decision has to be made, right? To do something with the insight, as we know, is the key to adoption. Right.
Oh, massively, massively. And in some ways, all these questions about where should it appear, it's the technology questions and the quality of life question. To a certain extent, argue if the reason someone is not actioning the events because it's in one system and not another system, they haven't been brought on the journey enough. If that's their blocker, then I'm concerned that's masking other issues with regards to, is that person overwhelmed with the amount of work they've got and you're asking them to do more? Have they been really onboarded into this idea of we're going to be doing maintenance in a different way? Have people been informed about how you want to work it, etc.? I would say the promise of making it slicker in the future is good. It's a good thing and it will help. But if you're doing that initial, we want to change things and do better, for me, that should be a secondary concern to that kind of adoption question, I would say.
Yeah. And that leads, I think you're involved in it as well. We've just released a white paper about this very topic, actually, about change management, or how it's actually bigger than change management, in fact. We looked at it and thought, actually, that doesn't really describe what we're talking about here as well. So, yeah, we're saying it's technical integration is almost like the easy part in some respects, right? Let alone the part where it's, right, we need you to actually believe the insight, believe the system, take action on it, report back on it, and that kind of thing.
Yeah, I would say it might have been different 7, 8, 9 years ago. Projects don't fail based on technology, right? And how it's integrated. Those things all make it easier to make you faster, to make you more effective, to support the existing structures. But fundamentally, the technology is proven. It's about whether the local organization can adapt and be equipped as well, right? Can they adapt to the change, adapt to a new way of working? Are they supported by their management? Are they supported by a good partner, whether that be Siemens or a different provider or a third party providing it? And are people, and I'll use a cliched word, but are they empowered to make those changes? Do they see the benefit to their day-to-day? And I think that is, amongst the business side and the people side, that's the most important part. It was interesting, the title being the problem between the AI and the work order. It makes it sound like they're the problem, which I thought was quite amusing. They're not the problem, they are the solution to all of this, and all of this technology should just be supporting them to be able to use the insights that they get, use the cases they get to effectively drive the ultimate aim, which is to avoid unnecessary, costly, potentially dangerous events on their plant floor.
Yeah, and to be honest, the more I look at that title, I was looking at it again before. It's like all these titles are sort of draft and, but to be honest, the more I looked at it before, I came to the conclusion, is that actually the right thing? So I will come up with a better, ignore that. Ignore that, scratch it for the record. No, but what I wanted to mention, actually, because I think you came up with a really great point you said about adapting to workflows, because often in the marketing speak, not just Siemens, but again, any technology will fit into your workflows, no problem, we'll just drop you in straight there. But that word adapt as well is the important thing, because sometimes it's a bit more seamless than others, but maybe it's a question for you more so, Chris. It's an adaptation, right? It's not dropping into workflows, but we're talking about there has to be adaptation and some sort of expected adaptation, what I'm saying.
Yeah, and I would say it's an evolution rather than a revolution in terms of adapting workflow. It's not about taking what you have and putting it in the bin, right? Because to a certain extent, for a lot of people, what they've been doing has been working and they're looking to optimize. And so if you're going to optimize, that requires some change. So you are going to have to change, adapt how you do things to allow for better ways of doing stuff. So I think the idea, so it slightly pulls against one another. You're going to have to change your day to day, But equally, to make it an easier change, it should slot at least into the same structure. So if you have daily meetings with the whole team in the morning about defining who's going to do what that day, it becomes a section of that daily work, that daily meeting. You still adapted it, you've still added a bit, but it fits within your normal path. In the same way that I find it helps to frame things in what do we do in similar situations, but not quite the same. So what happens when an operator hears something squeaking in a gearbox or in their machine? If they're a good operator, which most I'm sure are, will tell their maintenance team, maybe at the end of shift or whatever it might be, by the way, I heard some bad squeaking, you might want to get a look at it. That then flows into your work notification system. Okay, we'll get someone to go out there, we'll plan it, we'll do an initial inspection, etc., etc. You can see the cases as just like an operator saying there's something squeaking, just potentially with more precision, depending on how well instrumented and the platform that you've got built around it. But it's just another input that then you flow through that. But you do need to have someone or a team who are responsible for taking those seriously and working out what the next steps would be.
That makes a lot of sense. And actually, I guess that links nicely to the next question, because we talked about integrations and where to pick up insights, and obviously to take it, insights are great, but without action and all that stuff. But what role does the CMMS data play in improving the AI, like in Senseye? So all that, you can imagine all that rich data and feedback. How does that play into things? We know, and I was talking to our colleague, our head of research at Senseye, James, the other day, and the word context comes up a lot. Yes. Speaking to him, I'm recording tomorrow, I think, with him about context a lot as well. So I guess that plays quite a key role in all this.
Yeah, and particularly as technology keeps improving, for me, the integration is about optimizing the process to getting to the answer. So for a really simple example, let's say you had a fan that has vibration measurements on current and the product that's probably not product. So let's say the rotational speed of the fan. Fans increase in speed, they increase the amount of fluid that's flowing, so the current goes up and vice versa. So, fairly standard relationship. If you had a sudden drop in fan current and fan vibration, your speed didn't change. So let's say there's nothing changed in your environment. There's then a question, what could that mean, right? So first off, I've already introduced some context, the rotational speed of the machine. We've eliminated that. So the process at that point is, if I'm in the kind of person's shoes, I'm thinking, why would that have dropped? Have we done any recent work to that machine? So let's say it dropped on a Monday and there was a shutdown at the weekend. Maybe we've done some work. So then I could go into my CMMS system, have a look. Did we do any work? What was completed? Oh, yeah, we did a bearing change, or we lubricated the bearing, or whatever it might be. Okay, I know what that was. That's fine. I can close it. But that takes time, right? That takes someone to actively have to go away and look for that information, which they could be doing other things. If that's integrated into the platform, Senseye is smart enough to look back in history and say, I see that there's a case raised, but I see that there was a work event just at the weekend. Now, James probably can go into more detail about any kind of vetoing, etc., that might be considered or whatever. But effectively, if that case opens, you instantly have the information there to say, oh, it was maintained at the weekend, vibration's gone down, current's gone down, it's what we expect, I'll just close it. So that alert goes from maybe an hour's job to 30 seconds. And so you can be much more efficient. But I would always argue, from my perspective, I would always want to see that drop, alert it to it, see that the maintenance was effective, and then close it. So it's just a quick, especially if it only takes you 20, 30 seconds. So that's where that integration comes into play, really optimizing, getting to the points where, oh, this is the thing I really need to focus on.
Yeah, and that's a huge difference. It's the manual effort involved, plus the systems, talking to each other, things being updated. You don't have to update in Senseye, then go into your CMMS and update. So you can already see things starting to feel a bit more slicker.
Yeah.
I think what I was going to add in terms of It's like any platform that has data, right? Because the question I was going to ask around quality, the quality of data seen in CMMS, how well they're maintained, but I don't know whether it's comparable. But I always think of like CRM systems, like in most cases, like a complete mess, right? They're complete like missing field, missing information, missing. And how does that affect sort of the integration and some of the things we've talked about today? So we've talked about how it informs the AI that's doing the analysis.
So I used to work in the rail sector as a maintenance analyst, and one of my jobs was to review maintenance records to work out what were the hotspots on the line. And the amount of things where you would look at what they said, let's say it was a points failure, and then you would look at the description and it would have nothing to do with the points. So those two things didn't align at all. So a lot of information disappears. Now, the reason people do it can be wider variety. If it's 4 o'clock in the morning, you're exhausted, you've been on a 12-hour shift, I can have a lot of sympathy for someone just wanting to press the buttons and get back in the line, get home, get in bed. So I completely understand why it happens. But saying that, the accuracy is so important, because particularly when you come into more automated systems, is that in some ways the date, even having what the description of the work is, as long as it's close, you'll be all right. But it's the date of which the work was completed. When you're looking in time, that bit can be really important. And it brings an interesting challenge. And this is why I mentioned about the giving a little bit of time and then doing your integration, your CMMS integration, is if you rush it, you might actually misunderstand what is the real point in your CMMS integration, what is the real time for the actual work. Because the time that you record might be different to when the physical spanners, the physical equipment is on the machine. Maybe you did it at 14:04, but actually you didn't go and complete the work order until 2 hours later. And that's the time you say the work is closed. 2 hours later is after the event, whereas 2 hours before is during and before the event. And you can imagine that in between, you've got a step change.
Yeah.
So it makes it much harder. Systems can be designed to adapt for it, but it's always going to be working harder than it necessarily needs to. And the date that people, so I'll keep going on about it, but the date that people use is different depending on the plant, the personnel you have, the standards the company uses, etc., etc. So there's little bits of information you have to really make sure we all are on the same page of what is the actual time that work was complete.
Yeah. Yeah, so everyone's got an agreed standard of what that actually means. Because you're right, that the way you described it is perfect. So it could be completely down to interpretation. and it's
interesting when you use the word standard, and which I like, and it also gives context to the standard for those who, and it requires a bit of training, a bit of knowledge transfer. As well, the reason it's not just the standard is X, it's the standard is X, and because of this reason. And you get value out of it. And we found the more we use the CMMS information over the years, the more integrations we get, because people get it, as in they see the benefit. Once they get something out of it, they're more likely to put into it, rather than maybe 6-7 years ago, it was a nice little thing to have, but the AI doesn't read it and all that. It reads it now, so now people really want it in, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it does. It does. I wonder would you say a CMMS system is just standard now when you talk to, I guess it depends on size of organisation, right? But the type of organisations you're in, the deployments you're involved in, do they generally have these systems in place already? Is it quite rare for them to not have at least a CMMS present? And that's how they work at the moment, maintenance-wise?
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's rare, but it's uncommon to not have one. The vast majority of organizations, particularly, certainly at global level, will have a CMMS that they use. Yeah.
I wonder what the calculations change. I think now, because I've seen it, I've been involved since 5 years now, and I've seen how PDM's come from a magical trying to understand what it actually is to today where it's plastered everywhere as far as the eye can see. But I'm wondering whether people used to compare the two side by side sometimes, like PDM and a CMMS, and go, well, we've got a CMMS, so we're fine, right?
Yeah, and a lot of CMMSs offer a PDM module as well. So yeah, they're often I wouldn't say they necessarily misunderstood the two terms. Maybe you'll probably know better than I, being on the marketing side. I tend to be with customers who've had some education by that point because they've been through the whole sales cycle. So I'm probably not the best to say. But yeah, there is some element of confusion. I've got a CMMS system that says it does PDM. Why would I have a separate PDM system? And it's that classic. Depends if it's any good, right? Depends if they've invested enough into it and gone the right technical approach in order to make it a valuable part of their suite, or was it we have a CMS organization, we have to have modules, so we better put one on. It's that kind of element, I would say, and that probably adds I would say that adds more confusion to the market than necessarily the difference between the two, at least today.
Yeah. No, agreed. Yeah, I'll just add to that point about confusion. That's a point of confusion. There's different providers who say they do predictive maintenance, but I mean, what is predictive maintenance? Defines predictive maintenance compared to other different flavors of predictive maintenance. And I wonder sometimes there is confusion, a little bit of confusion in the market. There's no standardized way of doing it. Maybe that's a good thing. I don't know, but it doesn't make it easy for a customer sometimes.
I don't think you could argue we call it Senseye, like using our example, Senseye Predictive Maintenance. Fundamentally, the predictive maintenance bit is what the people do on the ground. Platform. The platform is the enabler to allow them to do predictive maintenance, but I guess in some ways it of itself isn't predictive maintenance. So, and that comes back to the original thing of people are the most important part of this whole thing. We're effectively enabling them through this process.
Yeah, enabling them to introduce predictive maintenance into their. Yeah, no, I completely get that. But marketing purposes, it.
Oh yeah.
So
you don't want my 12-line description of it on the marketing slide, right? It's a bit technically, yeah.
So yeah, technically, it's not the software; it's you guys. That's good. That's good. So yeah. So we're coming towards the end. One thing that maybe has changed, Chris, since last time you were on the podcast, we do a quick lightning round. As I explain on every pod, I guess everyone knows this by now. Some take it very literally, so we'll give one-word responses and keep it very lightning, as the name suggests, whereas others are a bit more verbose in their response. And both approaches are fine, so there's no judgment from me. And sometimes I break all the rules by answering follow-up questions, which is definitely not what a lightning round's about, but I make the rules on here, so it's fine. But 3 questions. So what matters most for adoption? Accuracy, trust, or convenience?
Trust.
Excellent. I won't ask the follow-up to that one. Trust in the system, we're saying.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely. Convenience will help. Accuracy is always good, but someone needs to trust when they get an insight that they know what to do with it. And they trust that if it's showing something concerning, that there's likely something concerning on the other side. And they have trust in their own organization that they will be backed to make potentially uncomfortable decisions when they need to pull a machine earlier than expected, that kind of thing. So yeah, trust.
Yeah, brilliant. And yeah, what's the most challenging in terms of a deployment? Is it the technology itself? Is it the process of deploying it? Or is that who owns the deployment? What causes the biggest challenge?
Oh, I would say own, in terms of ensure, it's ownership. Technology will slow you down. Connectivity is always challenging because it depends on the company's IT rules. It always needs to be adaptive, and that will slow you down. But I would say ownership is the most important thing. If no one owns it, no one uses it, then it's just some pretty lines on a graph with some nice text. Someone needs to own it and use it.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree.
And that's the most challenging because that's up to human relationships.
Yeah, true. It's very important.
There is, and we just haven't found it yet.
Yeah, maybe. If anyone knows the secret, please let us know. And then the final one, and I guess this maybe is a good excuse to expand it because it's the heart of what we're talking about today. But in terms of the future of integrating and with CMMS or otherwise, from your point of view, Chris, standardized, customized, or a little bit of both? Hybrid, better term.
Hedging the bets is hybrid, right?
That's sitting on the fence. No, it's fine.
I can refer back to how I talked about this. Having standard tools will get you 80% of the way there, and we're constantly working to make it more standardized. But because customers' environments are not all the same, we have to have some customizability, both from a local technology, local IT, or global IT, and local people, how they use and how they maintain and how they look after their systems. And so, yeah, I think it's definitely worth standardizing because you can be more cost effective, faster to market, faster to support customer, but they're always going to need, particularly in the CMMS world, a bit different when it comes to the actual analytics.
Would you even say a big global customer, hundreds of sites, each site could have a completely different way? They might have the same CMMS, but a completely different setup in how they use it, whether the technology itself or just how they, to what we're discussing, how they actually use the insights, how it fits into that workflow.
Absolutely. We've got a couple of examples where we've gone through the whole workflow process with one, say, region of a company within one part of the world. We set it all up and we talk about it being a global standard. You take it to a different region and we go, well, that all works for us, but this section doesn't. We're going to have to make adjustments here. And that's a global company that works on global standards with the same CMMS system, etc. And they still need to adjust it for the local case. Doesn't mean all the work that was done was useless. Well, first of all, it's been used in the original region, but most of it can be reused. But there are change requests, change orders, etc. that need to be made in order to make it work for them. It's just the nature of working with people. We'd love it all to be standardized, but actually, and there'll be good local reasons for the way they do things differently.
No, exactly. And that's why hybrid isn't sitting on the fence. It's actually correct.
Basically, it's the correct answer, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. No, definitely, Chris. So, yes, I think that brings us to a close, Chris. But I'd like to thank you, first of all, for coming on and sharing your experience. It won't be as long next time. I'm not going to look back in the archive, see how long it's been, but it won't be as long next time. I promise. But it's been really great to have you on.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure. Thanks for listening to me talk about things I enjoy, really. So, makes it nice and easy.
No, excellent. And I learned a lot too. So that's what I love most about this podcast as well. But yeah, hopefully everyone out there, you've learned something today. Feel free to connect with Chris on LinkedIn. I guess we can put your LinkedIn there if you've got any other questions. But aside from that, we'll see you on the next episode. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Please like and subscribe on all major podcast channels. And to find out more about Senseye Predictive Maintenance, go to Siemens.com.